Welcome to the Hot News Channel, where we strip away the noise to analyze today's breaking stories. It is Sunday, February 8, 2026.
Today feels different. We're always in the news cycle every single day. We talk about bills passing, we talk about political gaffes, we talk about the ups and downs of the stock market.
Standard procedure.
But sometimes, and it's very, very rarely, the veil just lifts. And I think today is one of those days. We are not just looking at a single scandal or a policy change over here or a financial report over there. We are looking at the true machinery. The gears of how the elite operate have been laid bare. It's this convergence. You have intelligence operations, you have global finance, and you have this sudden, incredibly aggressive shift in U.S. foreign policy all colliding at the exact same moment.
And it feels like a signal.
It signals a return to a very dangerous era, a sort of unipolarity that we thought was in the past. And quite frankly, the curtain has been pulled back on how the world actually works, not how we're told it works.
It really has. And what we have to unpack in this broadcast are three massive pillars. I mean, honestly, each one of these could be its own deep dive for an entire hour, but when you put them together, they tell a singular and, frankly, a very disturbing story.
They're all connected.
Absolutely. First, we have the visual confirmation, finally, of the House of Horrors in Manhattan. The Department of Justice has released over 3,000 photos from Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. And let me tell you, the details are, they're worse than we could have imagined.
I've seen some of them. It's chilling.
Then, totally shifting gears, but not really, we have Donald Trump's sudden declaration of a national emergency regarding Cuba. This isn't just another sanction. This is a move that puts the U.S. on a direct collision course with Russia.
In our own backyard.
And finally, we have to follow the money. We have new reports coming out that put a number on the global money laundering economy, and it is now so large it could rival the GDP of Japan, the entire country of Japan.
And that's the key, right? These are not separate stories. You absolutely have to understand that right at the top. The blackmail networks, the foreign policy aggression, and the dirty money that fuels it all, they are an ecosystem.
One feeds the other.
They feed each other continuously, so let's not waste any time. Where do we begin with the Manhattan files, the Epstein photos?
We have to start with the photos. There's no other place to begin. This is based primarily on the incredible investigative report by Dimitri Lascaris. He has been combing through this massive data set released by the Department of Justice.
And how many photos are we talking about exactly?
The final count is 3,158 photographs. These were taken by the FBI on one day, July 11, 2019, inside Epstein's mansion at 9 East 71st Street. Now, for years, we've heard the rumors, right? We heard about the weird decor, the bizarre art.
Whispers, tabloid stories.
Exactly. But seeing it is a different ballgame.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Well, it moves it from speculation, from rumor, into the realm of hard, cold evidence. And the psychological implication here is what we really have to focus on. This wasn't a dungeon hidden away in a secret basement where the upstairs was, a normal high society home.
No, not at all.
The perversion was the aesthetic. It was right there in the face of every single person who walked through that front door.
Exactly. So let's do that. Let's walk through the house based on these files. I want you, the listener, to picture this with us. You're a guest. You've been invited to this exclusive townhouse. You enter the foyer. The very first thing that greets a visitor, and remember who these visitors were.
Prime ministers, princes, CEOs.
The absolute upper crust of global society. The first thing that greets them is a sculpture. It's a sculpture of a young female, described as looking like a child, and she's wearing a full bridal gown. That is the centerpiece of the entrance.
A child bride, right at the front door.
Right there. Unmistakable.
So the moment you walk in, the tone is set. The terms of engagement are laid out. You are not entering a place of normal business. You're entering a place where all norms are suspended.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about the psychology of that for a second. If you or I or any regular person walked into a house and the first thing we saw was a life-sized statue of a child bride, what would we do?
You'd turn around and leave. You'd probably call the police.
Of course you would. But if you are part of this circle, if you are one of the chosen guests, you see that and you keep walking. It's a filter. It's a test. It filters out anyone with a conscience right at the threshold. If you pass that statue, you've already consented to what's inside.
And it just gets more specific, more targeted from there.
Yeah.
You move past that foyer into a hallway office. And there it is, the now infamous painting. We've heard about it for years. It's been a sort of urban legend.
The Clinton painting.
The Clinton painting. The FBI photos confirm it was hanging there prominently. It's a painting of former President Bill Clinton. He's wearing a blue dress, very similar to the one Monica Lewinsky wore, and bright red high heels, and he's lounging suggestively in a chair in what looks like the Oval Office. He looks comfortable.
Which is a complete power move.
Right.
That is not a piece of art. It's a trophy. It is a very clear signal to anyone walking past that I own this person, or at the very least, I can mock this person without any consequence whatsoever.
It's pure dominance.
It's pure dominance. If you have a former president of the United States depicted that way hanging in your hallway, you are telling every other guest who walks by that you are completely untouchable. You're telling them that the most powerful men in the world are just playthings in this house.
With these compromise hanging on the wall as art.
Precisely. It's bragging about the blackmail.
Now, Dimitri Lascaris' report points out something even more disturbing, if that's even possible, when you get to the massage room on the second floor. This is the room that victim Virginia Giuffre has described in her testimony as the dungeon. She described horrific acts of abuse happening there.
So this is a central location in the actual crimes.
It is. The photos show a massage table, which, you might expect in a mansion, but the walls are the story. They're covered floor to ceiling in photos and paintings of naked, emaciated young women.
Okay, stop there for a second. We really need to unpack that word, emaciated.
Yes, the report is very specific. These are not sensual nudes. These are images of starving women. Ribs showing, gaunt faces, images of suffering.
Think about what that means. If you are a guest, let's say you're a tech billionaire or a famous scientist or a head of state, and Epstein says, go get a massage, relax, and you walk into that room. You are literally lying on a table surrounded by images of starving, naked girls.
There is no way to claim ignorance.
You cannot possibly say, oh, I thought he was just a quirky financier. The environment itself was a confession. It was a statement of intent. If you stayed in that room, you accepted it. You participated in the normalization of that abuse just by being present.
And that's the core point that Lascaris makes over and over.
Yeah.
This evidence, these photos, they demolish the I didn't know defense that so many of these powerful men have hidden behind for years.
There is no plausible deniability left.
None. And it wasn't just that one room. There's another room described as a listening room, a room with very high-end speakers, a desk. The dominant visual in that room, hanging right where your eyes would naturally... A child. Lascaris estimates approximately 7 or 8 years old. A very young girl. That is the focal point of the room.
It's grooming. It's not just grooming the victims, it's grooming the guests. It's desensitization on a massive scale. If you see these images everywhere, they stop being shocking after a while. They just become background noise, part of the decor.
It becomes normal.
And that is how you trap people. You bring them into a world where the absolutely unacceptable becomes the standard, and by not leaving, they become complicit.
And then there's just the bizarre, surreal nature of it all. There's a photo of a bathroom on the second floor. Protruding from the wall is a sculpture of a woman's leg. Just a leg from the thigh down, putting on a ballet slipper.
Just jutting out of the wall.
Just jutting out of the wall.
Yeah.
There's another statue of a young boy sitting on a bench in the hallway. Then you get to the stairwells, and they are filled with these occult-like images, what Lascaris described as creepy and potentially ritualistic symbols. The whole house was a psychological operation.
It truly was a house of horrors, quite literally.
Yeah.
But we have to pivot now to the who. Because a house like this, an operation like this, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's a hub. It's a node in a network. So who was comfortable walking past the child bride statue? Who was comfortable getting a massage surrounded by those paintings?
Well, this is where the files, as analyzed by Lascaris, and also reporting from Dropsite News, become incredibly specific. The Israeli intelligence connection is, at this point, undeniable. We have documentation, flight logs, visitor logs that show Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, didn't just visit for a meeting.
He stayed overnight.
He stayed overnight.
No.
Multiple times.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? A meeting is one thing. You can claim it was business. An overnight stay implies a level of intimacy, a level of trust and comfort that goes far, far beyond a simple business arrangement.
Absolutely. You don't sleep at a business associate's house unless you are deeply, deeply integrated into their life and their world.
And you certainly don't sleep there if it looks like that.
And it wasn't just him. The files show that Yoni Koren, an Israeli military intelligence officer, a lieutenant colonel, no less, stayed at the apartment on at least 3 separate occasions. In 2013, 2014, and 2015.
A military intelligence officer.
A senior aide to Barak at the time. The logs show he was there for weeks at a time, conducting what is described as official or unofficial business.
Weeks? Not days, weeks.
Weeks.
This brings us directly to the compromise angle. I mean, we have to look at the bigger picture here. Why was Jeffrey Epstein allowed to operate for so long? Let's not forget, he was a convicted sex offender in 2008 in Florida, a registered sex offender.
And he got that sweetheart deal.
The deal of a lifetime. And yet, for more than a decade after that, until his arrest in 2019, he is hosting military intelligence officers and former prime ministers in his Manhattan mansion. The only conclusion that makes any logical sense is that the house was an intelligence gathering operation. It was a honey trap on an industrial global scale.
And the physical evidence from the house itself supports that theory completely. The FBI photos show signs. On multiple doors, bedroom doors, hallway doors, there are these professionally made signs that explicitly read 24-hour video surveillance.
Wait, the signs were visible? They weren't trying to hide the cameras?
Correct. They weren't hidden cameras in the sense of being, a tiny pinhole inside a smoke detector, though I'm sure there were those too. These were announced. It was overt.
Which is actually even more intimidating, isn't it? It's not about spying, it's about control. It tells the guests, we see everything, we own what you do in here. It completely removes any expectation of privacy. It's a power play.
And there's a dedicated room for it. A specific room with a label on the door, Cisco Systems. Inside that room, the photos show racks and racks of computer recording equipment, servers, hard drives. Lascaris points out in his analysis that there were drawers just full of DVDs and CDs, all meticulously labeled. It looked less like a home office and more like a production studio.
And this leads us to the question that I think defines our entire era. Where are the tapes?
Exactly. That is the trillion-dollar question.
If you have a room labeled Cisco Systems that's full of servers, if you have signs everywhere announcing 24-hour surveillance, and you have drawers overflowing with DVDs, the FBI raided this place in 2019. It's now 2026. We have seen photos of the decor. We have seen the massage table. We have not seen a single frame of video featuring a single high-profile figure.
The silence is deafening. Lascaris makes this point, and other reporters like Tara Palmieri have noted the absolute panic this document dump has caused among the elite. But the actual, the smoking gun, the footage, it's missing. We have these reports that the FBI has lost or cannot access certain hard drives from the raid.
Lost. In the most high-profile human trafficking case in modern history, it suggests the blackmail is still active. It's still a live operation. If the tapes were released, the leverage disappears. But if the tapes are held by whatever agency now has them, the power structure remains completely intact.
The people on those tapes are still compromised.
They are still in charge of corporations. They are still in governments. They are still making decisions that affect all of us. And they are compromised. And that means they can be steered. Their decisions can be influenced.
And while this is happening, look at the media reaction, or lack thereof. You have independent journalists like Lascaris, like the team at Dropsite News, who are painstakingly combing through this. But the legacy outlets...
They're collapsing.
They are. We're seeing reports from sources like Mondevice and MSN Now W that the Washington Post is in an absolute freefall. Jeff Bezos is dealing with mass firings. There's this persistent accusation that he's bending the knee to the Trump administration to protect his other business interests, but I think it goes deeper.
The credibility is just gone.
It's gone. Because they ignored this story for decades. They enabled it.
They didn't just ignore it. They facilitated it. Their star columnists attended the dinner parties. They wrote puff pieces. They normalized him. And now that the photos are out and the evidence is undeniable, they have nowhere left to hide. The Fourth Estate completely and utterly failed.
It's a massive interconnected web. And while the elite are in a state of panic over these photos, the geopolitical machinery is just grinding forward, creating the next crisis. So let's shift to the second massive pillar of today's deep dive, Cuba.
This is a story that is slipping under the radar for most people because everyone is, understandably, looking at the Epstein photos. But this move is arguably more dangerous for global stability in the immediate future.
Okay, so let's lay out the facts. On January 29, 2026, just a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order. He declared a national emergency regarding Cuba. Now, we've had sanctions and an embargo on Cuba forever, right?
Like 60 years.
But this is different. This is a whole new level of aggression. According to the detailed analysis by World Affairs in Context, this new executive order explicitly labels Russia as a hostile country that is operating in the Caribbean.
That specific phrasing is legally significant. Hostile country. That's not diplomatic language. It moves us out of the realm of sanctions and spats and into a pre-war footing. It unlocks a whole suite of executive powers that don't exist in peacetime.
And here's the mechanism. The order imposes what are called ad valorem tariffs on imports from any country that supplies oil to Cuba. So let's just break that down for everyone.
Ad valorem just means according to value. It's a tax based on the value of the transaction. But the real weapon here is the secondary sanction. It's not about taxing the oil. It's about punishing the seller.
Right. It's a global threat.
Right.
So if you are a company in, say, Mexico or Brazil or Venezuela or anywhere else for that matter, and you sell a single tanker of oil to Havana, the United States is now going to hit you with crippling tariffs on everything else you try to sell to America.
Yeah.
Your cars, your agricultural products, everything.
It's a blockade. It's an economic blockade enforced not with Navy ships, but with trade policy. It's the Monroe Doctrine on steroids. Trump is essentially saying the entire Caribbean is American soil, politically and economically speaking. And the target here isn't really Havana.
No.
Havana is the pawn. The message is for Moscow and Beijing.
The official line from the White House, the rationale they're providing, is that Cuba hosts Russia's largest overseas signals intelligence facility, the Lord Sigint Station. They claim this allows Russian military and intelligence to eavesdrop on the entire southeastern United States.
Which, is a bit rich, considering the U.S. has bases surrounding Russia and China. But look at the strategy here. By targeting the oil supply, you aren't fighting a military battle. You are trying to turn off the lights on the entire island. You're trying to starve the country of energy.
It creates a humanitarian crisis.
It's designed to create a humanitarian crisis. The goal is to make life so unbearable for the Cuban people that they rise up and overthrow their own government. It's a playbook for regime change.
And World Affairs and Context suggests the timeline for this is very, very specific. They believe the goal is to force a regime change in Cuba by the 2026 midterm elections here in the U.S.
Of course. Politics is always local in the end. The analysis cited Trump's approval ratings at a pretty low 38%, with 56% disapproval. A foreign policy win like toppling a communist regime just 90 miles from the coast of Florida, that plays very, very well to the domestic base.
It's a classic distraction.
It's the ultimate distraction. Don't look at the economy. Don't look at the domestic chaos. Don't look at the Epstein files. Look over there. We defeated communism in the Caribbean. But the risk, the immense risk, is that Russia doesn't just pack up its intelligence station and leave. They view Cuba as a vital strategic partner. This pushes us closer to a direct, hot confrontation with a nuclear power.
And the Cuban government has already responded. They've stated publicly that they will not negotiate under threat. They are warning the international community that a complete fuel cutoff will collapse their healthcare system, their food distribution. It's a game of chicken, and millions of civilian lives are the chips on the table.
And while these politicians are playing these high-stakes geopolitical games with entire nations, the global financial system is playing a different game entirely. We talk about sanctions on Cuba, meant to stop the flow of money and goods. But let's talk about the money that flows completely freely in the dark. This brings us to the trillion-dollar wash.
This segment, the research for this, it just blew my mind. We looked at a new report from Novara Media, and they featured a long interview with the investigative journalist Oliver Bullough, who is an expert on this. He breaks down the sheer scale of global money laundering. And the estimate, it's just staggering. The current estimate is that between $2 trillion and $5 trillion is laundered annually.
We need to pause and really contextualize that number. $5 trillion. That is, as you said, roughly the size of the entire GDP of Japan. It's larger than the economy of the United Kingdom, of France, of India. We are not talking about a few criminals with suitcases full of cash anymore.
No, this is systemic.
We are talking about a shadow economy that is so large, it rivals the world's legitimate superpowers.
And it's not really a shadow economy. It's fully integrated. Bullough explains that this financial infrastructure is what allows the worst people in the world to function. Drug cartels, human traffickers, people exactly like Jeffrey Epstein. Frankly, they cannot operate without this system. But the mechanics have evolved. It's not Miami Vice anymore with speedboats and briefcases.
No, it's far more sophisticated now. It's become trade-based. And you and everyone listening need to understand exactly how this works because it actually affects the prices of the luxury goods you see in stores every day.
Right. Okay, so Bullough details a specific mechanism called the Daigou trade. This is both fascinating and absolutely terrifying. Let's just walk through the specific steps he outlines, nice and slow. Step 1. You have a major drug syndicate in Europe, let's say in London. They have millions in physical street cash dirty pounds from selling drugs.
And they can't just walk into a bank and deposit that. The bank is legally required to ask for the source of funds, and they don't have a good answer.
Exactly. So step 2. They hand that cash to a broker, a money laundering specialist. That broker then finds people, often Chinese nationals, studying abroad, and gives them the cash. This student takes a duffel bag of dirty cash and walks into a luxury shopping outlet. Bicester Village in the UK is mentioned by name in the report. Or a high-end boutique in Paris.
And what do they buy?
High-end goods that hold their value, Rolex watches, Hermes handbags, things that are almost as good as currency.
A physical store of value.
Exactly. So that's step 3. The student ships those goods, the watches, the handbags, back to China. Step 4. The broker's network in China receives the goods and sells them on the local market.
And here's the magic trick. This is the key to the whole thing. They sell them for renminbi, clean, digital Chinese currency.
That's it. Step 5. The broker in China then transfers that clean money from their Chinese bank account to the drug cartel's supplier, who is also in China or maybe South America, to pay for the next massive shipment of drugs.
So let's just trace what happened there. The drug dealer in London got his bill paid in China. The supplier in China got paid. But no money ever actually crossed a border. No currency was ever wired from London to Beijing.
The value moved. It moved in the form of a handbag. It's a value transfer system that completely bypasses the entire international banking and anti-money laundering system.
And the luxury brands, they turn a blind eye. They love it. They're selling huge amounts of inventory. They don't ask why a 19-year-old student is buying 5 Rolexes with a bag of cash. It's willful blindness.
Completely. Then there's another system, which is even more direct. They call it the Vancouver model. This one is designed to get money out of China. So you have wealthy Chinese nationals who want to, say, gamble in Canada or buy real estate, but China has strict capital controls. You can only legally move $50,000 a year out of the country.
So how do you get $1 million to a casino in Vancouver to play high-stakes baccarat?
You use the Vancouver model. Step 1. The Chinese high roller flies to Vancouver. They meet a contact from a local drug gang. The gang hands them a hockey bag full of cash, usually stacks of $20 bills, street money from fentanyl sales. It's the dirtiest money you can imagine.
Okay.
Step 2. The Chinese national takes that bag of dirty cash to a casino. They walk up to the cage and buy chips. They might gamble a little bit, maybe they lose some, maybe they win some. It doesn't really matter. Step 3. They cash out. The casino gives them a check. A casino check is as good as gold. It is now clean, legitimate money.
And what's step 4, the swap?
That's the swap, the final piece. The Chinese national, now with a clean casino check in hand, gets on their phone and transfers the equivalent amount of money from their bank account in China to the drug cartel's bank account, which is also in China.
So again, no money ever crosses the Pacific Ocean. It's a ledger swap. It's a balance transfer. The cartel gets their fentanyl money laundered and available in China. The gambler gets their millions out of China and into the Canadian system. And as a bonus, the Canadian housing market gets massively inflated because that gambler then uses the clean casino check to buy a multi-million-dollar condo in Vancouver.
And here's the real kicker. The banks know this is happening. The regulators know. We have this massive global compliance industry. Oliver Bullen notes in the report that banks spend something on the order of $200 billion a year on compliance.
$200 billion with a B. And they failed to stop this.
Because the system, as Bullen argues, it isn't designed to stop the oligarchs or the cartels. It's designed to stop you. It's designed to flag a $10,000 transaction for a small business owner. It's designed to make banking difficult for ordinary people. He brings up the concept of debanking.
We see it all the time now.
We see political dissidents, like the Nigel Farage example in the UK, or Muslim charities, or just poor people who can't provide perfect documentation, getting their accounts closed because they are deemed high risk.
Yet, a multinational cartel washing billions of dollars through luxury handbags and casino chips, that flows as smoothly as water. It's a complete joke.
It is a two-tier system of justice. If you are big enough, the laws of financial physics don't seem to apply to your money. If you are small, you get crushed by the bureaucracy.
Which is a perfect segue, really, to what we're seeing happen domestically here in the U.S. We're seeing this exact same pattern, a massive crackdown on the little guys, or the perceived outsiders, while the big fish swim completely free. Let's talk about this whistleblower case involving the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard.
Right. This is a very complex situation coming from reporting by Allison Gill over at Midas Touch. We have a whistleblower from inside the intelligence community who is alleging that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is actively withholding politically embarrassing intelligence from the Gang of Eight in Congress.
And for those who don't know, the Gang of Eight are the top leaders in Congress from both parties. They are supposed to be briefed on the most sensitive intelligence. They are the core of legislative oversight.
They're supposed to see everything. And the allegation here is that this situation mirrors what happened back in 2019 with the Trump-Zelensky phone call. That information is being protected and hidden not for legitimate national security reasons, but to save the administration from political embarrassment.
So the politicization of intelligence has reached the very top. If the DNI herself is curating what Congress gets to see based on the potential political impact, then oversight is effectively dead. Congress cannot act as a check on the executive branch if they are being systematically blindfolded.
And while that's happening in the highest halls of power, look at what's happening in the courts to people who challenge the system. We have the case of Joby Weeks. This comes from some really detailed reporting by Kim Iverson. Joby Weeks was an early figure involved with a crypto company called BitClub. He's been under house arrest for 6 years without a trial.
6 years? Just let that sink in for a moment. In the United States of America, a citizen has been confined to his home for 6 years without ever having his day in court.
The government's claim is that BitClub was selling unregistered securities in the form of crypto mining shares. Weeks and his team argue that it was a mining pool, which is a different legal category, not a security. But the core point here isn't who is right or wrong on the legal definition. The point is, he hasn't been convicted of anything. He's just stuck in legal purgatory.
Now compare this to the money laundering we were just discussing. The big banks facilitate trillions in criminal money, they get caught, and they pay a fine, which is just a cost of doing business. No one goes to jail. Joby Weeks, a crypto pioneer who operated outside the traditional banking monopoly, gets his life completely paused for 6 years.
It sends a very clear message, doesn't it? Do not challenge the state's monopoly on money. If you play by the big bank's rules, you can wash cartel money and pay a small price. If you try to build an alternative currency system, we will lock you in your house until you break.
It's the selective enforcement that drives people to distrust the entire system. And speaking of narratives that are hard to trust, we have to touch on this Charlie Kirk situation.
This is a very murky one.
Extremely.
Baron Coleman has been doing some deep reporting on this alleged assassination attempt, well, reporting is very fluid, on Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA. The official narrative seems to be coalescing around a lone gunman, an individual named Tyler Robinson. But Coleman sources suggest that Robinson is, and I'm quoting here, a patsy.
The patsy theory. It's a classic for a reason in these situations. But what's really interesting here is the narrative friction that Coleman points out. You have the external narrative of a lone gunman, but then you have reports of serious internal financial conflicts happening inside TPUSA at the same time.
It's a $100 million organization.
With a lot of powerful people and a lot of money sloshing around. So you have internal strife, and then suddenly you have this violent event that, conveniently or not, removes a problem or completely changes the public narrative. Coleman also mentions a retired deputy sheriff neighbor who supposedly intervened. The details just don't seem to add up.
But again, what's the real story? It's the media silence. Why isn't this wall-to-wall coverage?
Because it's messy. It involves internal conservative movement money, potentially foreign influence, and it doesn't fit into a clean left versus right box that cable news can easily sell.
And when stories don't fit the approved box, they get suppressed. Which brings us perfectly to the topic of censorship, outright censorship.
And the face of it this week is, surprisingly, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the actor.
That's the one. Not who you'd expect. According to reporting from Sabby Sabs, he's been on Capitol Hill lobbying members of Congress, and he's there with a group called the Center for Countering Digital Hate. And their number one goal is to get Congress to repeal Section 230.
And Section 230 is the single most important law for speech on the internet. It's the shield that protects platforms from being sued into oblivion for what their users post. Without it, social media, forums, comment sections, they couldn't exist as we know them.
And how are they framing this push for censorship? As always, it's about protecting the children.
Think of the children. It is the eternal Trojan horse for every authoritarian measure in history. But if you peel back that one layer of emotional framing, this isn't about safety. It's about control. It's about crushing independent dissent and alternative media.
This is the Hollywood to D.C. pipeline in action.
It is. They want a curated internet. They want an internet where the only voices you are allowed to hear are the ones that are approved by the corporate sponsors and the political establishment. They want to turn the wild, free internet back into the 3 channels of cable TV we had in the 80s.
It all connects. Control the flow of intelligence, like with a DNI whistleblower. Punish the financial outliers, like Joby Weeks. Suppress the speech, like with Section 230. And when all else fails, distract with foreign wars. Which brings us back to the global flashpoints. We have to look at Iran.
The situation there is deteriorating very, very rapidly. It feels like we're on a knife's edge.
Reports from both Daniel Davis and Danny Haifong indicate that the U.S.-Iran talks are effectively failing. They're collapsing. But here's the bombshell that came out this week. Iran has revealed that during previous military exchanges, the U.S. actually dropped missiles, or attempted to, and those missiles failed to detonate.
That is a massive revelation, if it's true. It implies that the top-tier U.S. military technology isn't as infallible as it's projected to be. And if your military deterrent isn't working as well as you think it is, the risk of miscalculation and all-out war skyrockets.
And at the same time, you have Israel, through various official and unofficial channels, claiming that it won't survive a direct war with Iran, yet simultaneously pushing for escalation against Iran at every turn.
It's a paradox. It's the Samson options psychology. If we go down, everyone goes down with us. It's a strategy designed to force the United States to intervene. Israel cannot fight Iran alone and win a decisive victory without suffering massive, potentially existential costs. So the strategy has always been to drag the United States military in to fight that war for them. And with the U.S. now declaring a national emergency in Cuba, our resources are being spread very, very thin.
You mentioned the media collapse earlier. We talked about the Washington Post. But looking at sources like Mondo Vice and MSNOW, it really does feel like a total systemic collapse of the entire legacy media landscape. The mass firings at WAPO, the complete loss of public trust.
It's the end of an era. It's that simple. They lost the trust of the public, and they're never getting it back. They ignored the Epstein story for decades. They cheered for wars in Iraq and Libya that turned into unmitigated disasters. They gaslit the public on the state of the economy. And now they are financially crumbling. Jeff Bezos sees the writing on the wall. He's a businessman. He's cutting his losses.
So the fourth estate is being replaced.
It's being replaced by independent analysis, by deep dives like this one, because people are absolutely starving for reality. They're tired of being lied to.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground today. The Epstein photos, the Cuba crisis, the trillion-dollar money wash, the domestic chaos. What does this picture look like when you take a step back and see it all at once?
It looks like a system that is desperately and violently protecting itself at all costs. Think about the pieces we've laid out. We have a financial system that is designed to wash up to $5 trillion a year for criminals and oligarchs. That's the engine. That's the fuel.
Then you have the control mechanism.
Exactly. You have an intelligence apparatus, which was exposed by the Epstein files, that uses that dirty money and the sexual blackmail it facilitates to compromise world leaders with compromat.
Yeah.
That is the control mechanism. That's how you steer the ship.
And when people start looking too closely at the engine room or the bridge,
that's when you create a distraction, a huge life or death distraction. You have a foreign policy in Cuba, in Iran, that risks World War III, all to boost polling numbers and, more importantly, to divert public attention from the domestic rot. And finally, you have a domestic legal system that holds a crypto entrepreneur for 6 years without a trial because he threatens the banking monopoly, while the people on the Epstein client list and flight logs continue to run the world.
So the system isn't broken.
No. This is the most important thing to understand. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to, for them. The release of the Epstein photos is a glitch in the matrix. It's a tear in the fabric they've woven, and they are desperately trying to patch it up with censorship, with propaganda, and with war.
That is a very sobering thought to end on. Okay, before we sign off, what is the one thing, the absolute key takeaway that our listeners need to carry with them this week from everything we've discussed?
The one thing is this. Don't just be shocked by the Epstein photos. Look past the shock and understand their purpose. The House of Horrors in Manhattan wasn't a secret private hideout. It was a public networking hub. That is the most important fact. The photos prove that the most powerful people in the world were comfortable. They were happy to walk past images of child abuse to go inside and cut their deals. They knew, and at the same time, watch the national emergency in Cuba. That is the smoke bomb. That is the grand distraction designed to make you look away from the rot that those photos have exposed right here at home.
Powerful stuff. Thank you for that analysis. And to our listeners, if you found this analysis valuable, hit the plus or follow button on your podcast app and give us a like. Subscribe to the Hot News channel for more deep dives. Until we meet again, goodbye.